Okay, thank you, and welcome back after lunch. Just a reminder that the proceedings are being streamed in CR3 for anyone who is interested. So we had the presentations of the working papers on agenda item 2.3, future provisions of aeronautical and meteorological service. I want to draw your attention to the information papers 163, 180, 196, 248, 253, and 269. I'd like to ask the Secretariat to provide any clarifications before we open the floor for discussions. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all had a nice lunch. The Secretariat would like to make 2 points, 2 quick points. With regard to the recommendation in Working Paper 128, a similar recommendation concerning the development of cost recovery, implementation guidance, and governance considerations was presented at a recently held relevant ICAO expert group meeting in Montreal. And the expert group endorsed the recommendation with some slight modifications for further review by the relevant ICAO governing body. So in this context, Secretariat would suggest that the recommendation in this working paper, when considered by the committee, be aligned with the recommendation by the relevant expert group, which features supporting the ongoing work of the existing expert group by establishing an appropriate multidisciplinary working group. You will have the opportunity of hearing the specific text that we have provided to Mr. Chairman for his concluding remarks. With regard to Working Paper 287, one of its recommendations says that the conference proposed a means to ensure adequate safeguards in data quality and cost control with commercial services as end providers of data products replacing current tech products. In this respect, the Secretariat would like to inform the committee that Annex 3 already contains SARPs on quality management systems concerning the provision of met information for international air navigation. And that work is ongoing with ICAO with regard to cost recovery, implementation, guidance, and governance. The Secretariat also would like to bring to the attention of the committee that commercial services do not fall under the remit of ICAO. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Secretariat. The floor is now open for discussion. Slovakia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to you all. Well, coming from an area where FIRs are quite small, and as was said before, nature doesn't care about FIR, we welcome the working paper number 3 as presented by the Secretariat. And we strongly support the concept of a global system for dissemination of meteorological information, mainly the information concerning en route hazardous meteorological conditions, as is described in paragraph 223 of the working paper. This is in line with the working paper 40, which will be later presented by Italy on behalf of EU states, ICAO, and Eurocontrol. Nevertheless, we should ensure that such a global system is fit for its purpose and mitigation actions derive from it. Therefore, we suggest modification of recommendation A to also encompass the use of aeronautical meteorological information. This is in line, and in this regard, we also would like to support working papers 57 as presented by the USA and working paper 183 as supported by New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you. Russian Federation.
Спасибо, господин.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to express support for the provisions and the conclusions of working papers 3 and 57. Also, I would like to remind the conference that the ICAO WMO joint meeting adopted recommendation 2/9 about the regional consultative system on hazardous meteorological conditions en route. On the basis of this recommendation, the Air Navigation Commission, rather conference, sent job card 007 to the Met panel to develop a regional system. Thus, the further discussion of this in the Met panel and the needs of aviation users concluded that the main attention should be paid now to information on hazardous weather that goes beyond the FIR. As regard the provision of information, the Met Panel 14 adopted a recommendation and was sent to the AN-Conference. This recommendation was mentioned in several of the papers in the agenda item 2.3. The basis of what was set out in working paper 57, and especially in point A of the recommendation, we should have work coordinated at the global and regional levels regarding hazardous meteorological information. Thank you.
Thank you. Italy?
Thank you, Mr. President. We want to express our support to the paper 230 presented by Singapore. And we completely agree also on the recommendation. We want just to point out that the suggested actions are already being accounted for in the work program of the Met panel, and that the issues described in this paper are also relevant for other areas, and they are also resulting in forecasting challenges. Thank you.
Kenya.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. Kenya hereby supports Working Paper 101, that is provision of space weather, taking note of the current effect of space weather to satellite-based communication, navigation, surveillance, and its implication on safety. Further to that, we do support Working Paper 128, that is the development of cost recovery mechanism, and we consider this to be overdue, and it's good that something is being done about it by the ICAO Secretariat. We also do support Working Paper 57, notably the need for procedures of air navigation metrology to be adopted. And in addition to that, there was conclusion 3.3 in Working Paper number 57. We need to emphasize the enhancement of the objectives of the World Area Focused Systems to supply digital MET information, facilitating SWIM in future, notably including information of SIGMET and AirMet information. We also do support Working Paper number 60 and Working Paper number 183, which emphasizes on an exchange model suitable in facilitating SWIM, thus addressing the GAN performance improvement areas of global interoperability systems and data. So in totality, Kenya supports recommendation of Working Paper 3.
Thank you, Kenya. Denmark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Denmark would like to support, with regard to Working Paper 287, the concerns expressed therein, presented by Felda, and which was nicely expanded upon during their presentation by the working paper. Also support to the actions listed in the paper in order to mitigate these concerns. We do, however, understand that there is no problem to withdraw the traditional alphanumeric codes completely until at least 2026, and that the 2020 timeframe is only the introduction of the IWXXM format as a standard production responsibility for Annex 3 services will remain unchanged. And Mr. Chairman, just a comment here. I took it as the notion from the Secretariat before to verify this understanding of mine. Moreover, the Met panel in its deliberations have given considered thought to the adaptation of users and have defined actions to facilitate this process. We therefore propose to refer this subject to the expert panel for further discussions. Allow me, Mr. Chairman, while I have the floor, also to express support to working papers 60 and 128, both presented by the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Denmark. Ayata?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. IATA supports working paper 57 and a need for phenomena-based weather information. IATA also supports working paper 60, but we should be attentive to the timeline given, which may be affected by possible delays in SWIM or other challenges related to the implementation of IWXM. IATA also supports working paper 101, presented by Japan, and working paper 128, where we emphasize the need to have consultation with airspace users, as well as consideration of charges being apportioned to other beneficiaries of the system when applicable. And IATA supports working paper 183 and the recommendation to strengthen the work programs associated with MET, as well as working paper 230 and the call for awareness described in working paper 287. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayata. South Africa?
Thank you, Chairperson. South Africa would like to acknowledge and take cognizance of the following working papers and the excellent work that has been done. Working paper 3, working paper 183, working paper 101, working paper 128, working paper 287, working paper 57, and working paper 60. At this point in time, Chairperson, I would like to beg your indulgence to make specific interventions on the papers that have been presented. With regards to working paper 3, South Africa supports working paper 3 as presented by the Secretariat and the recommendation in paragraph A of that paper. With regards to the recommendation B, South Africa supports this recommendation provided that a cost-benefit analysis be performed with respect to the infrastructure development for states that will be required to invest in order to satisfy the requirements of SWIM in relation to space weather information services as well as a component of MET. With regards to working paper 183, South Africa supports this paper as presented by New Zealand. This paper alludes to various issues that are pertinent to the provision of aeronautical meteorology for the future. However, for further work, we take cognizance of the fact that there is very limited resources within ICAO. South Africa strongly supports the recommendations under paragraph 3 of working paper 183, with the emphasis being placed on states and especially the United Nations agencies, in particular ICAO and the international user representative bodies, to ensure sufficient internal capacity to underpin the collaborative global development already underway. And those developments are currently envisaged. With regards to working paper 101 presented by Japan, and with regards to 3A, South Africa supports the paper and further urges ICAO to firstly conclude the selection process for the regional and global space weather information providers, as this would then allow these providers to become more engaged in the aviation sector, and to allow for coordination within the respective regions. After the selection process has been concluded, we then put forth that it is recommended that ICAO provides guidelines around the standardization of training for users at different levels. In this respect to the regional cost recovery processes, we recommend that ICAO provide some guidance on this matter. With recommendation 3C, ICAO has already established the requirements for the use of space weather information for civil aviation. However, the process of acceptance and the use of this information provided, as well as the undertaking of the necessary research, can be fast-tracked with some assistance. It is then proposed that ICAO request states to share data and information with the space weather community in order to allow that research into the anticipated impacts will take place. Further, historical data information will significantly assist the space weather service providers to improve models and forecasts and provide verifications to build confidence and therefore use and rely on the information provided. At this point, Chairperson, I'd also like to put forth South Africa's position. South Africa puts forth the following position on this working paper. For ICAO requirements for the provision of space weather information to civil aviation to become a fully implementable, it is necessary for a direct working relationship to be established between aviation and space weather communities. The decision around the space weather information provider centers will greatly contribute to the relationship, as states will be aware of how this information will be provided. Additionally, it is of significant importance that a directive be provided on the provision of historical data and information, as well as feedback on incidents, situations, plans that have been or could have been affected by space weather events in order to facilitate growth of confidence and reliability in the information provided. I now direct your attention to Working Paper 128 presented by the United States on cost recovery. South Africa supports both the recommendations in A and C. Chairperson, with regard to Working Paper 287 and little c on the recommendation, we support as clarified by the Secretariat. In addition, Working Paper 57 and 60, South Africa supports Working Paper 57 and 60 as presented by the United States. Further, we also support the amendments by the USA in the Working Paper 60 as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa, for that comprehensive intervention. Thailand.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. Thailand would like to support the working paper 3 presented by the Secretariat, and paper number 60 and 128 presented by United States, and also paper 230 presented by Singapore. However, Thailand would like to add comment with regarding to the working paper 60 presented by the United States, endorsing the information for aeronautical purpose in IWXXM format. Thailand also see the need for ICAO to urgently identify the timeline to seize the exchange of information in TAC format as soon as practicable, to prevent unnecessary investment by states and encourage the exchange of information between swim-enabled systems for better operational efficiencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Thailand. China.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We support all documents with the exception of 101. We are very concerned with this paper. We understand in the MET panel meeting that's recently completed with regard to MET architecture, we have a clear conclusion. We will have 2 global centers and 3 regional centers. But with the conclusion of the ANC meeting, there has been changes.
Can we have China again, please?
中国请 Only after a couple of days in ANC, the conclusion has been changed. And it has become the current architecture for space weather. We are seriously concerned with this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, China. Asekna.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. ASECNA would like to support working paper 230 presented by Singapore to take into consideration the specificity of tropical storms and the regional approach rather than a global approach in the form of the new provisions and the consultative opinions on these phenomena. Also, ASECNA supports the paper presented by the United States on cost recovery and in improving the information provided.
Thank you, Asekna. Uruguay.
Thank you, sir, and good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to highlight the importance for Uruguay of activities related to aeronautical meteorology, given the level of specialization and the magnitude of the impact that such tasks have on air navigation. Meteorological information is and will continue to be essential with respect to facilitating international air navigation. We support Working Paper 3 from the Secretariat and WP 183 from New Zealand, including the recommendations presented in each of them. Thank you, sir.
Australia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Australia would like to support the papers presented under this agenda item. We do see that there could be some minor edits to some of the recommendations. In working paper number 3 from the Secretariat, in Part A, we'd like to see added to that, so request ICAO to ensure that it has sufficient capacity and expertise to progress the work. And in Part B, that request ICAO in conjunction with WMO to place emphasis on the development and implementation assistance for space weather information, but also to add the provision of a phenomena-based hazardous weather system. With respect to working paper number 60 from the United States, we fully support the update to the recommendation as given by the United States when presenting that paper.
Sorry, can we continue to have a...
Sorry? Okay. I thought my time was up. With respect to working paper number 287, we agree with the clarification from the Secretary for Part C, but with Part B, we'd like a slight change to that because at the moment it implies that we need to be fully compliant with all SARPs by 2020, which is probably the case, but the paper is referring to IWIXM. So I'd like to request that Part B be changed to request ICAO through its member states and regional offices to survey states as to what their expected IWIXM implementation status will be by 2020. So it's just to clarify the intent of that. But also to reiterate that we won't be getting rid of TAC in 2020, that they both will be a standard, IWIXM and TAC, for a period of time. And that it'd be nice to invite IFELDA to help the Met Panel with its activities, because we are looking at a lot of the questions that were raised by IFELDA, and it would be good if they could participate in some of those activities with us. That doesn't have to be a recommendation, it's just an invitation more than anything. With regard to the comments on Working Paper 101 from China, I think the paper is more to do about research and development. It isn't to do with the number of centres being discussed by the ANC at the moment. So I think we need to be really clear that what Working Paper 101 was really about cooperation between the centres and R&D once the system is established. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Australia. Now invite Netherlands.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to respond to Working Paper 101 and Working Paper 275. Netherlands supports Working Paper 101 by Japan. The provision of information on space weather should be tailored to the operational needs. The potential gap between the space weather information service providers and the end users that currently could be perceived should be bridged by close coordination. Next to the facilitation of this coordination by ICAO, as expressed in Recommendation A of the paper, the coordination with the end users should be an integral part of the working arrangements of the space weather information service providers. Finally, on Working Paper 101, we would like to underline the importance of research on the operational impacts of space weather phenomena on civil aviation, as called for in the recommendations B and C. To continue on Working Paper 275 by Indonesia, Netherlands supports Working Paper 275 on volcanic ash. We support the need to apply collaborative decision-making and information sharing principles to minimize the impact of volcanic ash on aviation. Europe regularly performs exercises on the impact of volcanic ash on the European Air Traffic Management Network. These volcanic ash exercises are normally held under the auspice of the ICAO EURNet office in Paris on a yearly basis. And the next volcanic ash exercise, number 18, is planned for 28 November of this year. The Eurocontrol network manager is strongly involved in these exercises as co-leader, and this ensures an efficient CDM process through operational teleconferences, information sharing via the network operations portal, and ash area visualization in support of flight planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Netherlands. Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Sierra Leone government has transformed the meteorological unit, which used to be part of the Ministry of Transport, into an agency for effective aeronautical meteorological services. Therefore, Sierra Leone support fully Working Paper 57 presented by USA and 60, and also Working Paper 230 as presented by Singapore, from the position that all these papers either urge or request ICAO to facilitate future provision of aeronautical emphasizing no country left behind, which give us the confidence that ICAO pay more attention to developing countries like Sierra Leone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sudan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Sudan supported Working Paper number 57 presented by United States, paper number 60 presented by United States, and paper 129 presented by United States also. Thank you very much.
Canada.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, sir. As regards WP 183, we support the principles and recommendations in the working paper and look at and view positively the potential effects with development of air navigation systems, which are essential for long-term sustainability. As regards WP 101 from Japan, we would like to restate the importance of maintaining a space meteorological service which meets the needs of users, particularly through the cooperation implicit in this paper. The conclusions would help us to attain that objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Japan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Japan supports the working paper 57 presented by the United States and working paper 230 by Singapore. For your reference, improved harmonized segment in the Asia-Pacific region, which will play a fundamental role in developing a framework of providing globally harmonized phenomena-based hazardous weather information and services for ATM provided by Japan Meteorological Agency can be seen in the information paper 253 and 248. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Nigeria would like to support the Secretariat Working Paper 3 and the United States of America Working Paper 5, 7, and 60 with respect to the significant contribution and support for the effective implementation of ASBO modules on CCO, CDOs, and work turbulence separation, as well as optimization of approaches with vertical guidance. However, Nigeria would like to comment or take note of the fact that on working paper 128, the need to avoid multiplicity of charges with respect to cost recovery for aeromet, and also take note of the fact that met charges in some states are factored into ANS charges of either en route or terminal charges. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigeria. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding Working Paper 275, as presented by Indonesia, we support the development of a collaborative decision-making mechanism and information system for users of Indonesian airspace. And we note the importance of for such systems to reflect specific regional requirements as demonstrated by existing arrangements in other regions. Thank you.
Thank you. France.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, sir. France supports WP 101 from Japan on space weather services. This document addresses important issues such as operational uses of space weather information by aviation and feedback issues in order to ensure that the service meets the needs of users and the need to deepen research on the impact of solar phenomena on aviation, as mentioned by the Netherlands and South Africa. We think that indeed there's a need to work on these issues, particularly in a context of modernization of aviation and increased use of the GNSS, as Kenya recalled. Thank you.
Thank you, France. Colombia.
Thank you, sir. With the understanding that the Met service is crucial and enables the ASPO approach, we support Working Paper 3 from the Secretariat, as well as WP 57 and 128 from the United States, and 230 and 275 on volcanic effects submitted by Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. Burkina Faso.
Merci, President.
Thank you, sir. Burkina Faso wanted to support Working Paper 230 from Singapore with respect to segment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other intervention? Okay, thank you. We'll just take a few minutes to summarize. Okay, thank you. And just a reminder that we summarize the discussions and the comments taken would be reflected in the draft report to the committee. I see that the committee strongly supports the aeronautical meteorology program and the need to support it at the state and ICAO levels by providing appropriate resources that recognizes it as an important enabler of international air navigation, and agree that ICAO should continue progressing the work on the development of provisions as described in the Global Air Navigation Plan. The committee requests ICAO to place emphasis on the implementation assistance, including guidance material for space weather information provision, globally consistent phenomena-based hazardous meteorological information, the meteorological component of system-wide information management, cost recovery solutions for regional and global systems, and potential new initiatives such as the impact of climate change on aviation. I see also that the committee endorsed the exchange of meteorological information for aeronautical purposes only in the ICAO Information Meteorological Exchange Model, and request ICAO, in coordination with WMO, to support the future implementation of IWXXM through various actions, which will be included in an appropriate recommendation. With regard to the provision of space weather information, the committee agreed that ICAO should facilitate the coordination between information providers and users. Additionally, the committee agrees to request ICAO, in coordination with other international organizations, ITU and WMO, and states, to facilitate research of operational impacts of space weather phenomena on international air navigation by performance-based approaches and the establishment of requirements for using the space weather information. Finally, I see support to the need to identify how aeronautical meteorological service provision has changed, how it will evolve, and how these changes may affect the recovery of the relevant costs associated with service provision on a global, multi-regional, regional, and sub-regional basis, and to request ICAO, in coordination with WMO, to support the ongoing work of the Met Panel by establishing an appropriate group composed of experts from the Met Panel, AEP, and ANSCP to review the current and future cost recovery systems. In summary, the consensus reached regarding the above points will be expanded upon and further detailed in the text of the draft recommendations to be presented to the committee for review. Are there any comments to this summary? Okay, thank you. And as this brings to the end of Denmark?
Thank you, Chair. One comment, though, that, let's say, in my intervention, I expressed that we supported the concerns expressed by EFALDA in their working paper 287. And from what I heard, this was somehow supported by my Australian colleague, in the sense that they invited the Secretariat to formalize somehow the work to be done with IFALDA in the Met Panel. So if that could be reflected as well, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Their points. The Commission makes the decision, so we'll refer it to the Navigation Commission for consideration.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Just a small clarification. We're not the decision makers for the people who sit on those expert groups. The Air Navigation Commission is, but we'll refer it to them rather than make the decision here. But thanks, Denmark. We appreciate where you're going from, and I'm sure everything will work out fine.
Thank you. As was emphasized this morning, the committee will discuss and present what we think should happen, and the Secretariat and commissions will take into consideration how we go about doing so. I again want to commend the committee for the way we are progressing. I think on my first reading of the working papers, I was very impressed with what was presented. And I think that has been emphasized here by the presentations made on these working papers. It has allowed us to have very good discussions. And I also want to endorse the acknowledgement of the contribution from IFALDA. I think many times we, those peripheral, what we might call peripheral services, are not really considered, and it's good that they have come forward, as we have encouraged other international organizations to present their concerns that we can then address. So thank you very much. We are progressing very nicely. And so we would take a small break, to set up for the next agenda item. So we have maybe about 45 minutes before the coffee break, so we'll want to get into that item. Thank you.